Good afternoon, and welcome to Making the Case with Dr. Akande. I'm Dr. Yemi Akande, and each week on the program, we'll bring you conversations with established and emerging leaders from a broad range of organizations as they offer their views on pressing local, national, and international issues that impact Northeast Ohio. My guest today is none other than State Senator Nina Turner. Senator Turner has certainly continuously devoted her time and energy to issues of education, employment, and building strong and safe communities. She has also embraced a no-nonsense attitude towards confronting the problems that face our cities and states on a daily basis. So welcome to Making the Case, Senator Turner.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
How are you?
I'm wonderful.
Good.
Yeah.
I have to tell my audience members they were actually taping today on the campus of Tri-C, and just watching you interact with the staff and the students here says a lot about your personality and the warmth that comes through and just who you are.
Oh, thank you so much. And these are people I hadn't seen since the new year, and I really try to greet. There are no people too great or too small in my philosophy. That's the way that I was raised, that everybody counts. And I try to exude that. So I'm glad that you saw, that you were able to witness that. That lets me know that I am on the right track.
It certainly came out.
Thank you.
So what is your story? What has your journey been like?
Wow, it's been an exciting one. There's a song that talks about I wouldn't take anything for this journey now. And as I reflect even on the very, very hard and gut-wrenching times thus far in my life, and then I think about the great things that have happened. And I must say today that I wouldn't take anything for this journey now. It has been challenging both as a woman and then an African-American woman, adding that layer.
Right.
But it has been an exciting journey. I mean, I grew up fairly poor, working class family. My mom died at a very, very young age. She was 42 years old, and I usually go deeper into the story, but for the sake of time, and I use this story to motivate both adults and young people that, as Langston Hughes said in his poem, Mother to Son, life ain't been no crystal stair.
Yes.
But the mother encouraged the son because she continued to climb. And that's pretty much how I feel as well, that although life is not fair, I don't think it was designed to be fair, but we're fighting for justice, as I like to say.
Right.
That for as one friend said to me, you can't have a testimony without a test.
That is true.
And so for everything that happens to us, both good and bad, it shapes and forms who we are. And we might not necessarily appreciate the bad when we're going through it or the challenge, but
Clearly.
after it's over,
right,
we do appreciate it. So my mom died at the age of 42. And matter of fact, I was a sophomore here at Cuyahoga Community College. And I thought, I thought my life was over because this was my mom. She was a welfare mother. She died on the system. She didn't have money for burial. A Christian woman, deeply rooted in the Christian tradition, believed in God, and she died. So I was only 21 or 22 at the time, and I had 4 siblings under the age of 18. It was a gut-wrenching time for me. Wow. But through that tragedy, it made me form the opinion that education is certainly the vehicle to improve one's economic status, and that for her memory I was going to continue to go to school, where for some that might have deterred them, I was even that much more determined for her memory and for other women like her who have struggled most of their lives, that I was going to continue to follow the path. And I did. And I didn't do it alone. I mean, I had fantastic professors here at Cuyahoga Community College and friends and people who believed in me, and my dad as well.
Right.
My mom, they divorced. They married very, very young. But my dad is a force in my life today, and I thank God for him. So for those of us, we should tell our parents how much we do appreciate them. They're not perfect, and neither are we.
Right.
But it's been a hard journey, but exciting, But I wish my mom was here to see her daughter with a few titles, and,
right.
before, and a few initials behind the name. But I think about her all the time, and as I work to be a better mother, a wife, a public servant, an educator, I think about her, and that is really a guiding force for me.
Certainly, that is a seminal event in your life that has helped shape who you are today.
Yeah.
What are some of the positives in your life journeys that you can share with our audience members?
Oh, wow. My son.
Right.
My son.
Proud mother.
So, very proud mother. So proud of him. He's a junior at Youngstown State. I am a first-generation college graduate, and I knew, once I was able to really, in a personal way, see the transformation of education and the opportunity that it provides, there was no doubt that my son was going to go to college. And so when I talk to people about, young people especially, about preparedness, do you want your life to be based on luck or preparation? But I think about the power of education. So now I am a first-generation college graduate, but there was no doubt. See, that seed that was planted, now my son becomes, right? And then his children and his children and his children. The power of that is really real generationally, that if you can get the one person in that family to go, you can change future generations for that family. My marriage to my husband, who is my rock, Jeffrey Turner Sr., he supports every crazy thing that I aspire to do.
That's great.
So family is important. Dr. Akande. I guess that's what I want to say, that you need, just like any great sports teams, they bring cheerleaders.
True.
But we all need cheerleaders in our lives. And so I have many cheerleaders, my family. I have close friends who cheer me on. I have strangers who cheer me on. So people, good people who believe in you. Those are some of the positives.
Those are very important in everyday life. I think a lot of people perhaps take it for granted.
We do.
Until you do need those cheerleaders, and you look around and perhaps you haven't really been nurturing those relationships in the manner that you should have. But with that said, we talked about your mom, we talked about the positives. Have you found that in your career there were some significant challenges that you experienced, and how did you sort of pull yourself together to come out of those challenges?
Well, I would say as a Cleveland City Councilwoman, and I was fortunate to work for many politicians, and I don't, being a politician these days may not be a mantle of honor to many, but I think when anyone takes the time to decide they want to serve the public in that way, and that we are public servants, that they're bad in any profession. Let me just say that. Imperfection. As people, we're imperfect. But the art or the science of politics itself, in terms of serving people, I think it's the highest honor that citizens can give to another citizen, which is to elect you.
Right.
I think for me, one of the most gut-wrenching moments I had, at least on the city level, was when two young children, both under the age of 5, were shot in a drive-by shooting in my community on the southeast side, Lee Harvard area, on East 173rd off Tarkington. And Doc, I was so wrought with anger and disappointment, all of the emotions, that a spat at a park could turn into this, we don't care about life, we're just going to randomly go down the street and shoot at the house where we think the person we're after. And two young children got shot. And I held a press conference not shortly after, where the community gathered. We had Cleveland police there, people from the mayor's office, to say enough is enough. That no level of poverty, no level of anger at somebody else gives you the right to try to snuff out another's life, and to do it in such a way that you don't have a regard for little Sally, who may be riding her big wheel down the street, or Kwame, who's riding his bike down the street. Just a total disregard for human life. That touched me in a way, because when I think about our ancestors, and I know this is January, and we're going to talk about Dr. King, and we're going to go into February, and their journey and their sacrifice to fight against racism and discrimination, right? Dogs and water hoses, just because they want to be treated like equals. And then in the 21st century, we as African Americans kill one another at such alarming rates. We have a crisis among black males, and we have to come to grips with that, and we have to do something about that, and that has nothing to do with institutional racism in my mind. Institutional racism still exists, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't institutional racism that drove these young black males down East 173rd Street on a summer day to shoot, and then in their shooting, they shot two young children under the age of 5. We cannot tolerate that. So similarly, the way our ancestors would not tolerate second-class citizenship in this society,
Right.
In the 21st century, as a people, we have to stand all across this nation, this kind of violence is going on, to say that we won't stand for it. So that really has shaped my outlook and really how I feel about how we must go forward as a nation as a whole, but in particular as a black community.
Right.
What our obligations are to one another in the 21st century.
We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll have more with Senator Nina Turner. I'm Yemi Akande, and this is Making the Case.
Foreclosure is hard on every member of the family, but your family is not alone. If you're struggling with your mortgage, there is help. To learn about the government's Making Home Affordable program, visit makinghomeaffordable.gov or call 1-888-995-HOPE to speak to a HUD-approved housing counselor. It's free of charge. Visit makinghomeaffordable.gov or call 1-888-995-HOPE today. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, NeighborWorks America, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Making the Case. I'm Yemi Akande, and we're with Senator Nina Turner. What do you think are perhaps some of the barriers to overcoming that, pulling together the African American community to really deal with nitty-gritty issues like that to some individuals, it exposes us as a people?
Right. And I'm conflicted about that. You know, we're not supposed to air our dirty laundry.
Right.
As you recall, and some of your listeners probably do, when Dr. Cosby came out with the real, as I like to call it,
Right.
and he got criticized. How dare you? But I think Dr. Cosby was right. Your so-called dirty laundry is walking up and down the street.
Right.
Right? People know. They might not talk about it in mixed company, but you
Sure.
best believe in their private circles, they're talking about this conundrum. And whether they're talking about it in a way that demeans African Americans as a whole, or they're talking about it out of concern, everybody knows.
That's right.
This is not a secret that between the age of 15 and 35, you are most likely to lose your life at the hands of another black male. Let's face it. So I think in the 21st century, we just have to come to grips with that and deal with it in a way. And that doesn't mean we let institutional racism off the hook. We can deal with both.
At the
but
same
it's
time.
hypocrisy if we overlook, you know, there's a scripture that talks about the mote in your eye.
Right.
Right? We have to deal with this crisis. And I think it's crisis of family, it's crisis of community. Even single family households 20 to 50 years ago, you had a strong community.
Right.
And for me, as a social scientist, I think that is what is primarily lacking. It's not just a single female-headed households, but it's that Miss Johnson is not on the porch anymore because she's scared, right? A big mama is not there anymore because she's scared. And so what was lacking in the household, the community took up the slack and the school system took up the slack. Well, now that African proverb that says it takes a village, well, the village is sick. We must restore the village, and we got to have some truth talk about what the challenges are and how to address those challenges. It's hard.
It is very
hard.
difficult.
It's hard.
But how can we begin to even start that conversation?
I think on the multiple layers, there's not just one answer,
Right.
but the school system is certainly the key. And I know it's an unfair burden for urban school systems across this nation, and particularly in Northeast Ohio, particularly in Cleveland, it's a burden that they have to bear because they're trying to compensate for what's missing
Right.
in the household. But that's where you start. You know, Dr. Eugene Sanders of the Cleveland schools, he has a program called Students of Promise, which was really born from an initiative that Governor Ted Strickland started to close the achievement gap, which was born by the vision of former State Senator C.J. Prentice, who said, we cannot continue to let black male children languish in mediocrity. They're not graduating, right? And we know that's the key to sustainability in the 21st century. The floor now, the basement level, really is a high school diploma.
Right.
There was a time when that's all you needed. That's the basement.
That's the base, yeah.
Right? But you got to get from point A to point B. And so Senator C.J. Prentice's vision to try to close that gap, and they made such great gains. The General Assembly gave about committed that $20 million. They agreed with the governor, great gains. And now the program has evolved, as most programs do, and in the Cleveland area it's called Students of Promise. That's where we started. We need people, people have to come out and volunteer. You have to care enough. You got to care whether or not your blood children are in this system or not. And you got to give up your time and yourself. We got to bridge the generational gaps.
That's
where I was
huge.
fortunate to have a grandmother who
Right.
was in her 60s when I was coming of age. we need those elders in the community because they're the connection. They talk to us about what it was like. And I think a lot of young people, especially African Americans, don't understand the struggle. So they don't really appreciate what they have today. And their life is hard. There's no doubt about it. But they can transcend all of that. I often say to students, because I teach African American history, when I talk to young people, how many of you had to pick cotton this morning? You know, and I'm looking, and I know it's a, you know, and they're scratching their head. How many of you had to worry about being separated from your loved one because you had to go on the auction block this morning? Raise your hand. And none of them did. And my message to them is that that's hard.
Right.
Right? Every generation has its trials and tribulations, but that's hard.
Right.
Right? And we stand on their shoulders so that if they can surmount those atrocities and challenges to build the kind of life in America and world that we have today, then by God, I mean, we owe it to them. Indeed. To be our best selves, to get the education that we need to build the relationships, to, as my grandmother used to say, act like we have some sense.
Right, that's true.
You know, because we've lost that.
That
you
is
know,
true.
Civility is lost in today's society. And that's not just with African Americans. It just seems like this American shift.
But you've certainly conveyed your passion about this subject matter. But one of the things that I've always been curious about is, what was the impetus for you running for elected office?
Oh, wow. I had an opportunity when I was a junior at Cleveland State University. A group of friends and I, with our crazy selves, started an organization called Students for Positive Action.
That's powerful.
But we understood that we needed to start at home, and we wanted to do some grassroots work. We didn't know exactly where that journey would lead us, but we knew we had to do something besides complain and get together and pontificate about and wax poetic about all the problems and injustices in the world. So we did that, and we started a voter registration drive in Councilwoman Fannie and Lewis's ward. We're privileged to get some of that grassroots training by her. We wanted to engage folks and remind them that they have an obligation in a democracy. Democracy is participatory. It's not a spectator sport. You got to participate. So I would say that was really my first. And then I had what's called a legislative service internship opportunity. Again, a professor at Cleveland State prodded me to compete for that, and I got it. And I was fortunate enough to work for the first African-American woman state senator, Ryan McGlynn, mayor of Dayton, and her father is the Honorable Legend C.J. McGlynn, who fought very, very hard to equalize state contracting for African-Americans and other people of color, that kind of thing. And then I had the wonderful opportunity to work for Mayor Michael R. White. That totally transformed. It took all of the lessons.
In what way were you transformed?
I learned that public service is 24/7. That especially when you serve a city, you know, people, their needs transform our 9 to 5.
Right.
And that you have to work very, very hard. And that there's no downtime when you are a city, when you work for the taxpayer.
You're constantly on.
You're constantly on. And Mayor White personified that. I will tell you, we were constantly on duty for the sake of the citizens of the city, that you have to really believe in what you're doing in such a way that you're going to nurse this baby. You know, you're going to take care of this baby. You're going to help this baby grow and to thrive. And that's what, that next level, what it meant to be a public servant. So when the mayor decided not to run again, I said, wow, I really like being a public servant, even though I was an appointed public servant at that time. And I decided to run in 01 and was not successful. But even in our failings, we learned lessons.
At first, you don't succeed.
Try again.
Exactly.
And I ran again in 05 and was successful and became the first woman, actually, to serve Ward 1 on the southeast side of the city of Cleveland. And then the opportunity to join the Ohio Senate came about when Senator Lance Mason was appointed by the governor to a county judgeship here in Cuyahoga County. And then I competed for the appointment, and here I am, and this is 2010, and I'm running this year. So I counted, you know, I wouldn't take anything for this journey, but I worked very hard. But oftentimes some things that come our way is based on your hard work and preparation, as I tell young people, that you know, there's another African proverb that says one cannot build the shield on the battlefield, right? We got to prepare.
Yeah, that's true.
And you have to be prepared so that when opportunity knocks, that you are prepared. And one of the things that I really subscribe to, and this is something that Mayor White taught me, you know, when he left office, and I just asked the question, Mayor, what can I ever do to repay you for the opportunities that you provided? And he said, you got to do for others what I have done for you. And so that message to me says that I am here not just to fill a space, right? I have an obligation to my district, the 25th Senate District, which is a very diverse district, religion, wealth, ethnicity. But I also owe in that I shape and fashion and blaze a trail for somebody else, that I reach back, that I mentor, that I give of myself. And I do that here at the college every single day. But I also do it, I volunteer at John F. Kennedy on a regular basis. I visit schools on a regular basis because I believe one day I have to pass the baton. And I want to be able to say that I help to make a difference in a deep way. For somebody else, young and not so young. So I really feel obligated to give back.
Now, one of the challenges that I think Cleveland over the years has certainly faced is this brain drain issue. How do you think we can sustain Cleveland's emerging leader? How can we convince them to stay?
Well, we have to provide opportunities. No one's going to stay in a region where there are no jobs. So that is the first thing that we need to do as a region. In the state of Ohio, we have the third frontier, and that's time for the General Assembly to decide whether or not we're going to put that bond issue back. That issue generated, I think, 41,000 jobs. We need jobs, and more jobs. People stay where there's opportunity and vitality. And so we have to continue to push, programs, and we were talking about that earlier. I mean, Fund for the Economic Future, NEO, all of these Jumpstart, all of these great opportunities that we have to stimulate economic opportunity. I would say career more than just job, because when I think of job, but careers that people can raise families on. We have to elevate our school systems in Northeast Ohio and in Cleveland. We have many more miles to go. But I think between economic opportunities through careers and strong schools, we have stellar institutions of higher learning in this region. We are so blessed.
Definitely.
We are the mecca for medicine right here in Northeast Ohio, with the clinic and UH and Metro Health, right? So we have what it takes. So how do we leverage that? That becomes the key. How do we leverage our assets? We have to do that, and we have to do that in a regional way, and we have to do that soon, right? Because we don't have a whole lot of time.
Right. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll have more with Senator Nina Turner. I'm Yemi Akande, and this is Making the Case.
My name is Jamali Rasheers, and this is how I live United. Education has been so important in my life, but lots of kids in my community don't have the same opportunities. I'm an advocate and fundraiser for my local United Way. I help promote academic achievement and give kids a reason to stay in school. We also put together events to raise funds and bring our message to the kids that need to hear it most. My name is Jamali Rasheers. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Making the Case. I'm Yemi Akande, and we're with Senator Nina Turner. Senator Turner, I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question about the whole depiction in the Call-in Post. We've heard a lot of political pundits on the radio talk about how they believe that this is an opportunity for the African American community to publicly address some of the issues and challenges that exist within a community of people that oftentimes people think of them as a monolithic group. What are your thoughts in reaction to the whole, what happened as a result of that?
Definitely unfortunate. I mean, if anyone knows the history of the mammy, an image that was used to dehumanize black women, and an image that we have abhorred for quite some time, that we fought against that as a people. Certainly, people have a right to, in America, we can disagree, and we should disagree without being disagreeable, but that was an unfortunate period for us here in the city of Cleveland. I do want to encourage people to to be strong, and we have to speak out against that. These images have historical connotations that are very, very negative, and it was certainly uncalled for. But with that, the positives that can come out of this is a coming together. I can't tell you how many people contacted me from all ethnicities to say that this was wrong. So, and it's like Dr. King said, and I think he made this statement in 1957 or so, but it was in one of his speeches, what affects one directly affects us all indirectly. That we are all connected, indelibly connected, right? And so I think the positive that can come out of this is a higher sensitivity to how we treat one another. And that in the 21st century, all that Dr. King and other heroes and sheroes fought for was for African Americans and white Americans and Latino Americans and Arab Americans and Asian Americans, for all of us to be able to come together to discuss our challenges, our hopes, and our dreams, not to be separated. And so for me, the coming together of people of all ethnicities on this issue is the positive. And also young people, the outpouring. You know, you and I talked about technology, the use of Facebook, what Robin Mentor Smyers, who led that charge, was able to do, and the young people who came out to speak out against that. So again, we got to restore civility, and that doesn't mean we always have to agree. But to tear someone down, we are not homogeneous. Right? In the black community, I think because of our historic struggle, and I get that, right, has at times forced us to have a one voice mentality. I think in the 21st century, it's okay not to be homogeneous, and it's okay to have a different thought or a different belief, and that doesn't make one less or more committed to their people. And that we are, you know, as even President Obama, you know, when we look at his great feat, he could not have done that only with African Americans, right? He did it with white Americans, with all Americans believing in his vision for change. That same thrust we need right here in Northeast Ohio. That doesn't matter if you're on the west side of the Cuyahoga River or the east side of the Cuyahoga River, that we are all in this together. Regardless of religion, ethnicity, gender, age. Doesn't mean we're always going to agree, but we certainly are working for the same cause, which is a stronger region, one that provides a future for our children, one where we can be safe, one that radiates to the rest of the world that we are somebody here in Greater Cleveland. And it's going to take all of us to do that.
So. And a lesson indeed. But
Yeah.
out of that comes positives related to the importance of collaboration in a community.
It is.
And letting people speak their voice.
Yeah, that's what we fought for in this country, right?
Indeed.
And how ironic for someone to say that anyone doesn't have the right to speak their mind, you know? Yeah.
Thank you for your candidness on that question.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have for today on Making the Case with Yemi Akande. I want to thank our guest, Senator Nina Turner, for joining us today. If you have questions or comments about today's program, please email them to mtc88.7@gmail.com. Making the Case with Dr. Akande is produced with the support of WJCU in University Heights, Ohio. Our theme music is by Alexander May, and our associate producer is Greg Priddy. I'm your host and executive producer, Dr. Yemi Akande, inviting you to tune in next week at the same time for another edition of Making the Case.